more stable income, but be able to speak truth to power and say that you deserve what you have. For all those reasons, I'm very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks. I will now invite the member of government to go to the back half of this debate. Here.
When OO gets up and says, what is really not that much money you've spent on your mortgage payment, they kind of screw themselves. That's a lot of money, a lot of income that you now have, a lot of time that you now have that you can invest in other things, in your future, in your children's future. We think, that several $1,000s a year accrues and amounts to a lot of things that mean that now I'm not paying my rent hand to mouth. I am slowly beginning to do things like accrue savings. We think that a main problem in communities of color and the reason that they cannot create a social, political, or economic foothold is because the wealth that they have is not transmittable to the next generation. Because it is very hard to move that wealth when it is debt. Considering that African American women literally have negative wealth, we think that increasing that wealth by any means necessary means that we are likely able to begin fixing problems. Mind you, they don't provide you a real mechanism by which these things change other than hoping that white people change doing the things that they've always been doing and that are equally as entrenched in societal problems as the things that we've talked about. No thanks. Before I go into my own speech, which is how this does change both the economic and the political power of communities of color, of women, of LGBTQ communities, I have 2 points of rebuttal. First, this idea about class consciousness and how we have to change the narrative to a class-based issue, not like an individual identity-based issue. We think that white communities, especially in the United States, but also in places like South Africa, also in places like Australia, long ago, especially poor white communities, mobilized against communities of color. It is very, very unlikely that those views change. So what do we have to do when that reality is true? When after years without giving people economic support meant that those communities still hated you, what do we now have to do? What does the alternative have to become? It means that we have to provide people the individual ability to create their own power for themselves, to no longer have to depend off of a white community somehow changing their mind, hoping that they do. No, thank you. But then they bring up this idea of entrenched racism, or like this idea of entrenched identity. One, we think that several $1,000s a year, and I'll bring this to my speech, does mean something. It means that you are better able to do things like accrue savings. It means it's easier to take out loans because you have savings. It doesn't look like you are drained on money. It means you are better able to think in the long term about your child's success because you are not worried about how you are going to feed them. Second response to this, the rhetoric surrounding people of color, women, the LGBTQ community is already pretty bad without these policies. We think that now it is time to have an alternative look at how we change these systems, i.e. the repealing of the Voting Rights Act happened in their world. Third response, by targeting things like poverty and the poor and saying that this is the way we're going to deal with it, there's 2 things. Or actually one, and they kind of lump the same thing. You ignore the way that intersectionality plays out. Because if we acknowledge that we ought to pay people based off of income, you have to acknowledge that race plays into income, how you access your income. A poor black woman is far more likely to be less well off than an equally poor white woman. Why? Because at least the white woman has a higher possibility of attainment than the black woman does because of things like structural racism, which means she is less likely to be able to do things like get a job. She also is likely to live in a community where she is supporting multiple family members, considering that more than 60% of black women's income not only goes to themselves, but to supporting other people that are not related to them, because you have to ensure that everyone is able to eat. Yes, Nelson?
Okay, we agree that white women are somehow more likely to have economic opportunities than black women. But the fact of the matter is, if they're both poor, they both have zero opportunity in that setting. Why should you then not have that consciousness that reflects all of them across socioeconomic lines?
We don't think that it's zero opportunity. We think that if the white woman has zero opportunity, the black woman has negative opportunity. That's the reality of most racial interactions, is that when white women make 27 cents on the dollar, or whatever, 76 cents on the dollar, black women only make 55 cents on the dollar. We think that those types of intersectionality plays very importantly into the way we understand race and we understand interactions. Example, Brazil, when they instituted policies that targeted the poor as a general group, the Perdão community within Brazil, the black community, didn't do as well as the mestizo or white-appearing community within Brazil. We think that that's a problematic set of narratives to discuss. But, into my own case, I know it's late. No, thank you. Governments have too long benefited from the economic disenfranchisement of systematically oppressed groups. They've directly profited off the control of vital lands of Aboriginal communities, the control of people's bodies, etc. This is literal government profit. The actions by the government have meant the continuous economic disenfranchisement of these people. Example, because of slavery, things like Jim Crow are its remnants. The economic disenfranchisement that occurred are its remnants. But how to reduce taxes acts as a functional and symbolic change. The unfortunate part of being an oppressed minority is that disenfranchisement means that even the richest of you struggle to create sustainable economic footholds. You struggle to do things like accrue savings. You regularly lose money attempting to support other people. But what are the impacts of allowing people to increase access to savings? We think the first is individual change, which Opening Gov talked about, but more importantly, political change in one of two ways. One, you are now treated as an individual, profitable voting bloc, because now you can donate money to politicians. No longer will politicians ignore you and shove you to the side. And two, you are now able to create supportive political institutions. Women, when they were able to accrue enough money, were able to do things like invest in Emily's List. We think that this is proof that you are willing and functionally able to do these things and accrue an ability to become a political foothold. So now you can actually fix those structural problems that Opening Gov and Opening Op so desperately want you to fix. The key is in politics, and that is why Jacob and I are so proud to oppose.
And the speaker for those remarks, and I will now invite the member of opposition to open up the back half of the opposition.